Kapitana Palava Giripaladhare Kapitana Palava Giripaladhare Yashodhanandana Vrajatana Ranjana Yashodhanandana Vrajatana Ranjana Yamunatira Manasare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare Jai Radha Kapitana Palava Giripaladhare Kapitana Palava Giripaladhare Yashodhanandana Vrajatana Ranjana Yashodhanandana Vrajatana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Paramahansa Paravrajacharya Status His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Iskcon Standracharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Shri Shri Nitai Mayapur Chandra Ki Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Shri Ram Nomi Mahotsava Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Go Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Devotees, so of course, as we're all well aware, today is the very auspicious and wonderful appearance day of Lord Sri Ramachandra. Sri Ramachandra Bhagavan Ki. So we will read from Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto, chapter 10, titled The Pastimes of the Supreme Lord Ramachandra. And yes, well, interesting sort of, you could say technical point, but it's not really just technical, is that Srimad Bhagavatam, of course, is authoritative from the beginning to the end. It's been authorized and, confirmed to be authorized. And everything which is there is accurate and no concoctions and no what they call interpolations, things sort of added in or changed around a bit as whoever's the person who's doing these things would like them to be done. So it's all authoritative, and therefore when we read about anything as presented in Srimad Bhagavatam, then we know it's accurate and it's really true. Otherwise we get, there's Valmiki Ramayana, well, there's Tulsi Das's Ramcharitamanas, which is just, it's a modern, relatively speaking, modern creation, and some may be authoritative and some is not. Then there's Valmiki Ramayana, which is Vedic. It's Vedic, but there are many versions of Valmiki Ramayana with, a classic example of something which, has obviously been sort of changed, at least shall we say, is the story of Lord Ram going to Lanka, and in some versions of Valmiki Ramayana it says that he worshipped Lord Shiva and got some empowerment in that way and went to Lanka, was able to cross the ocean and go to Lanka. And in others, there's no mention of it at all. In others, there's mention of it, but not as being like a very important factor in the whole pastime, all the pastimes. So in other words, we don't really know. You can't really know what is authoritative and what isn't in that sense. Yes, so therefore, best is to focus on the descriptions of Lord Ram and his pastimes as presented in Srimad Bhagavatam. You know, if there are things in particularly Valmiki Ramayana which are referred to in the Srimad Bhagavatams, it's obviously it's just two chapters, so it's a very short presentation, whereas Valmiki Ramayana is 25,000 verses, which means it's bigger in a physical sense than Srimad Bhagavatam, which is something around 15,000. So just two chapters, but some things which are referred to, addressed, points which are addressed in the Bhagavatam about Lord Ram, and then they're also addressed in Valmiki Ramayana. It may be possible to take what Valmiki Ramayana says there, but otherwise, in general, best to focus on Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the emperor of all evidences, the emperor of all scriptures, and the most authoritative of all literatures, full stop. So what we'll do, we'll read through a few verses, make a few comments as we go, from this chapter 10 of the 9th canto, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord Ramachandra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So let us begin our reading of this 10th chapter of the 9th canto by reading verse 2. Tasyapi Bhagavan Esha Sakshad Brahmamayo Hari Amsham Shena Chatur Dagat Putra Tvam Prartita Surai Rama Lakshmana Bharata Shatrugna Iti Samgyaya. Translation: being prayed for by the demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth Himself, directly appeared with His expansion and expansions of the expansion. Their holy names were Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna. These celebrated incarnations thus appeared in 4 forms as the sons of Maharaj Dasarath. So Lord Ramachandra is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth Himself, as the verse says, and He directly appeared with His expansion. And whose is expansion in this context? Lakshman. And the expansions of the expansion. is Bharat and Shatrughna, who are expanded from Lakshman. Yes, interesting. Yeah, these sort of details you get in Srimad Bhagavatam are very important. So let's read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Ramachandra and his brothers, Lakshman, Bharat and Shatrughna, are all Vishnu Tattva, not Jiva Tattva. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expands into many, many forms. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Ananta Rupam. It's Brahma Samhita, verse 33. Although they are one and the same, Vishnu Tattva has many forms and incarnations. As confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, verse 39, Ramadi Murtishu Kala Niyamena Tishtan. The Lord is situated in many forms, such as Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna, and these forms may exist in any part of his creation. All these forms exist permanently, eternally, as individual personalities of Godhead, and they resemble many candles, all equally powerful. Lord Ramachandra, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna, who, being Vishnu Tattva, are all equally powerful, became the sons of Maharaj Dasarath in response to prayers by the demigods. The demigods prayed specifically because there were so many demons around at the time, and particularly there was the super demon, Ravana, who was very aggressive and very materially desirous of material enjoyment. So, and he particularly, and his associates and relatives, many of them, were really causing many trials and tribulations for devotees and pious people and just the people in general on earth at the time. He was a very extraordinary person, Ravana. Of course, we know from Srimad Bhagavatam that he is actually Jai of the two, Jai and Vijay, the two doorkeepers, gatekeepers of Vaikuntha, who earlier on in the third canto particularly, there's the description of how they fell into the material world, being cursed by the four Kumars. And it's all a bit of a long story, but that was kind of the basic situation. So the two of them came down, and first they appeared as Hiranyakashipu is Jai, he's like the sort of the leader, and Hiranyaksha was Vijay, who's the younger brother of Jai. Then they appeared as Ravana and Kumbhakarna. Then they appeared as Shishupal and Dantavakra in the pastimes of Lord Krishna. They were cursed. Anyway, as it worked out, they were given a choice. You're cursed to appear in the material world, but you can choose. Either 3 births as demons or 7 births as devotees. Which would you like? And Jai and Vijay, this is something which is described by Srila Jiva Goswami. Jai and Vijay chose, let us take 7 births as demons, not because they wanted to be demons, they liked the idea of being demons, but it would only be 3 births as opposed to 7 if they appeared as devotees. So Jiva Goswami makes the point, this indicates that they had Salokya Mukti. That was their position. that their position eternally was that they had this particular eternal taste for being with the Lord, like physically with the Lord, Sarlokia, on the same planet as the Lord. Therefore they wanted to get back as quickly as possible. So, it's arguable that if they'd be given a third choice, that you could appear as like super demons, completely way out demons, not just, they did appear as super demons actually, but some special, really, really special demons, the likes of which have never been heard of before. For just one life, they would have chosen that. Only one life, and we get back. Yeah. So Sarlokya Mukti is an eternal position, like Sarupya, Samipya, Sarshti. These are particular types of liberation which people in Vaikuntha have, and they're eternal positions in which those particular devotees who have those natures, in this case, wanting to be close physically to the Lord, that's their nature eternally, to be like that and to feel like that. And then they had made a special fourth appearance. They were cursed to appear 3 times, but then they made a fourth, like a special guest appearance as Jagai and Madai in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. And that was some special mercy because they got the association of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And as a result, they made transcendental advancement. Particularly Madai got special, extra special mercy from Lord Nityananda. Anyway, that's another story, but at least that's there. Yes. So this is why the demigods prayed, as is described here. Otherwise, there's so many demons, and the demigods don't pray for the Lord to appear to deal with those demons, like now, with all due respect to whoever is due respect. There's no shortage of demons on this planet, like particularly political demons, but there's also business demons and, wealthy demons. But the Lord hasn't appeared, at least in our lifetimes. He appeared as Lord Chaitanya to set the scene for the Krishna consciousness movement in these times. But there's no praying from the demigods now for the Lord to appear to kill. Let us not mention any names, but the sorts of people, I'm sure you can imagine a few. So let's carry on here. I'll just read the translations. O King Parikshit, the transcendental activities of Lord Ramachandra have been described by great saintly persons who have seen the truth. Because you have heard again and again about Lord Ramachandra, the husband of Mother Sita, I shall describe these activities only in brief. Please listen, and I won't read through the whole purport, but Prabhupada makes the point that at that time there were already many versions. At the time of the compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam, there were many versions of his pastimes. some authoritative, some partially authoritative, and some more sort of whimsical and not really authoritative. Yes. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that those who are learned and spiritually advanced will never accept that Lord Ramachandra is not the Supreme Lord. They will accept the descriptions of Lord Ramachandra and his activities only as presented by Tattvadarshis, those who know the absolute truth. So, Prabhupada also says, apparently, 5,000 years ago, there are many Ramayans, or histories of Lord Ramachandra's activities, and there are many still, but we must select only those books written by Tattvadarshis. And he refers to Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 34, very famous verse, Jnaninas Tattvadarshinaha. Not the books of so-called scholars who claim knowledge only on the basis of a doctorate. And many of them claim knowledge, but they don't even have doctorates. So, it's a messy situation. So this is a warning by Shukadev Goswami. And then Prabhupada says, although the Ramayana composed by Valmiki is a huge literature, the same activities are summarized here by Shukadev Goswami in a few verses. And as we mentioned, there are a number of versions of Valmiki Ramayana, unfortunately, with significant differences in some important cases. We mentioned that one about, did Lord Ram worship Lord Shiva in order to become able to cross, or didn't he? And we can read, now we'll read the next verse or two, I think 2 verses, or next verse, which refers to constructing the bridge, but not really worshipping Lord Shiva. So this is now verse 4. Is it, or 3 and 4? To keep the promise of his father intact, Lord Ramachandra immediately gave up the position of king and, accompanied by his wife, Mother Sita, wandered from one forest to another on his lotus feet, which were so delicate that they were unable to bear even the touch of Sita's palms. The Lord was also accompanied by Hanuman, or by another monkey, Sugriva. In other words, doesn't mention the name, that just mentions the verse itself, the Sanskrit. He was accompanied by a monkey, and must obviously be a very important monkey. And Hanuman was generally taken to be the most important of the monkeys, but Sugriva is also very, very prominent. So therefore Prabhupada himself has expressed it like this: Hanuman, or maybe it was Sugriva, who was the king of the monkeys. And he was also accompanied by his own younger brother, Lord Lakshman, both of whom gave him relief from the fatigue of wandering in the forest. Having cut off the nose and ears of Shulparnika, thus disfiguring her, the Lord was separated from Mother Sita. He therefore became angry, moving his eyebrows and thus frightening the ocean, who then allowed the Lord to construct a bridge to cross the ocean. Subsequently, the Lord entered the kingdom of Ravana to kill him, like a fire devouring a forest. May that Supreme Lord, Ramachandra, give us all protection. This is a blessing, actually. some verses in Vedic literature, in Srimad Bhagavatam. They have some blessings for the readers, and this is one of those verses. Yeah. That may the Supreme Lord, Ramachandra, avatat naha, may he be pleased to protect us. We find, like in Chaitanya Bhagavat particularly, there's really quite a number of verses which are blessings. That if you read this pastime, then you'll get some wonderful result. Yes, okay. So one interesting point, it's really a very interesting point indeed, is that there's mention made of, there are other mentions made too, actually, in the Bhagavatam, of being separated from Mother Sita, being kidnapped by Ravana, Mother Sita being kidnapped by Ravana. Anyway, let's just read on a bit further and then we can address that point. In the arena of sacrifice performed by Vishvamitra, Lord Ramachandra, the king of Ayodhya, killed many demons, rakshasas, and uncivilized men who wandered at night in the mode of darkness. May Lord Ramachandra, Shri Shri Nitai Ramachandra Ki Jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai. And the story is that they threw rocks into the ocean and they floated. Looks like we've got a few of the rocks here. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we should try to see if they float. There is one child, well now he's a young adult, in Port Elizabeth. I won't mention any names. I imagine you'd know him if you know the devotees in Port Elizabeth. He heard about this, that Lord Ramachandra had his followers throw rocks and boulders, not just little rocky things like this, but boulders and even the peaks of mountains into the ocean, and they floated. So this one, at the time, little boy, what he did, he took some rocks and chanting very vigorously the name of Lord Ram, threw them into the swimming pool to see if they floated. They did not float, which distressed him considerably. So he went in, took the rocks out, and wrote on the rocks, Ram, in very nice Sanskrit, and then threw them in again, loudly chanting. Didn't work. Anyway, such is life. I guess he was not on the same level as Hanuman and company. But when you go, if you go to Rameshwaram, which is where all of this is meant to have happened, then you find people who try to sell you or just tell you that they have rocks from those rocks, and they take those rocks and put them like in a little bowl of water and they float. Problem is they're not rocks, they're pieces of coral, and coral floats, whether it's from there or whether it's from anywhere like the Pacific Islands or whatever. Coral floats. So it's just, it's another one of these fundraising techniques. Tell people anything you like as long as they give you money. So, but let me just read this verse again. In the arena of sacrifice performed by Vishvamitra, Lord Ramachandra, the king of Ayodhya, killed many demons, rakshasas, and uncivilized men who wandered at night in the mode of darkness. Yes. And listen to this. May Lord Ramachandra, who killed these demons in the presence of Lakshman, be kind enough to give us protection. It's another blessing. Another blessing. Very nice. Verses 6 and 7. O King, the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra were wonderful, like those of a baby elephant. Any of you familiar with baby elephants? I mean, I've had a little association with a baby elephant. They're very cute. And they sort of fool around in funny ways. So their pastimes are like, they're amusing and endearing. I spent a little time actually with 2 baby elephants in Mayapur, not long before COVID, and they were a lot of fun. And they're not big enough to kill you as their mother is very easily. So you can play around with them and it's not dangerous. So, right, in the assembly where Mother Sita was to choose her husband, in the midst of the heroes of this world, he, Lord Ramachandra, he broke the bow belonging to Lord Shiva. This bow was so heavy that it was carried by 300 men. But Lord Ramachandra bent and strung it and broke it in the middle on his own, just as a baby elephant breaks a stick of sugar cane. Thus the Lord achieved the hand of Mother Sita, who was equally as endowed with transcendental qualities of form, beauty, behavior, age, and nature. Indeed, she was the goddess of fortune, who constantly rests on the chest of the Lord. While returning from Sita's home, after gaining her at the assembly of competitors, Lord Ramachandra met Parasuram, who's another form of the Lord. He's actually Jiva Tattva Shakyavesh Avatar. Although Parasuram was very proud, having rid the earth of the royal order 21 times, he was defeated by the Lord, who appeared to be a Kshatriya of the royal order. So we can mention the point here about Mother Sita being kidnapped, apparently kidnapped. Actually this point is addressed in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's an important point that Mother Sita apparently was kidnapped and overpowered by Ravana, and she's a Kshatriya girl. We can assume she didn't just go along that, you want to kidnap me? All right, here I am, let's go. No, she resisted. Of course she resisted, but she was not successful in her resistance, and therefore Ravana was able to take her and did take her. And then, various things happened with her after that. But the thing is, as described here, that she was equally as endowed with transcendental qualities of form, beauty, behavior, age, and nature, and power as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because indeed she was the goddess of fortune. She is Lakshmi, or actually Mahalakshmi, the original form of the goddess of fortune, and she is immensely powerful. And this bow mentioned here, so heavy that it was carried by 300 men, doesn't mean men like you and me. You know, if it was me, I don't know how many thousand versions of me would be required, because old age, sure, it really undermines one's physical strength. These were 300 Kshatriyas, warriors, you know, professional, trained, powerful, really powerful men. And it took 300 of them to carry it. But there's a story, it's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, well, it's mentioned, yeah, and by our acharyas, that before the competition, Swayamvar competition, the bow was on a sort of like a support. It was sitting on something. It wasn't on the ground, because it's sacred. It's the bow of Lord Shiva. So it was sitting on some supporting structure just inside the palace. And Mother Sita and her girlfriends, one day they were playing a ball game, or some sort of a ball game, in one of the courtyards, in the courtyard just outside the room where the bow was sitting on this little supporting structure. And they're throwing the ball around, and it got stuck in the tree, in a tree in the courtyard. So they tried to get it out, to shake it out, and they tried to climb up and get it out, but they couldn't. So what to do? They're going to lose their ball. And so Mother Sita said, I know, look, there's this bow here. Let me just get it, and we'll push the ball out. So she did, and with one hand, she carried the bow and pushed the ball out of the tree and put the bow back. And I read, there's mention that some of the soldiers who were guarding the bow saw all of this, and they were just completely amazed. So then, when the competition actually happened, the competition was, the bow is on the, whatever it's on, structure, supporting structure. You got to lift the bow, hold it up, string it, and that's what you got to do. Yeah. So all these princes were there, and they're all Kshatriyas, they're all powerful young men. And they all tried to lift the bow because Sita was such a desirable young lady. I mean, just with qualifications which, like you could say, unimaginable for people like us. But they couldn't, nobody could lift it off the structure, whatever it was sitting on. And the last person, or second to last, who tried was Ravana, because Ravana was there. And he wanted to gain the hand of Sita if he could. So he was the only one who managed to lift it about 2 inches. And he struggled and strained and just battled to try and lift it. He lifted it a couple of inches, he couldn't manage it. It fell down on his fingers. And now his fingers were caught. Couldn't get his fingers out. So Lord Ram was to be the last one. So he came over and nonchalantly said, "Can I help you? Do you need some assistance here?" And with one hand, he lifted the bow off Ravana's fingers. And then holding it up, strung it, pulled the string so hard, the bow broke. Yeah. And that's why Parasuram later, it mentioned here, met him on the road and confronted him and tried to challenge him. Because he thought, you have offended Lord Shiva by breaking Shiva's bow. So anyway, so he defeated Parasuram, because the thing is, he appeared to be a Kshatriya, Lord Ram. He's a form of the Lord who displayed his godhood generally less than many others, less than Krishna, where Krishna literally every day was killing a couple. Every day it was one after breakfast and one after lunch, or one before lunch, one before breakfast and one before, just like immediately before lunch. And these were, real powerful demons, massive demons. And Krishna just killed them, so many of them, 2 a day, at least while he was going out herding the cows. Even before he went out, before he started going out, he killed Putana and Shakatasura, Trinavarta, etc., a number of demons. But when he was out herding the cows, it was 2 a day, and occasionally 3. Yeah. So he showed how he's completely superhuman on many, many occasions. Lord Ram, not so often. So anyway, the thing is there that Ravana couldn't lift the bow, was not able to lift the bow. Mother Sita lifted the bow with one hand, because she is not just a demigoddess, like Durga, Parvati, but she is actually the goddess of fortune, yes, who's in a completely different category in all respects, including power. So how could someone as powerful as her be kidnapped by Ravana, who couldn't even lift the bow, which she lifted with one hand and sort of just waved it around? It's not possible. So that point is addressed in some detail in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Chaitanya meets a devotee, a Brahmin, very nice devotee, who invites him for lunch. And this devotee, Brahmin, is a devotee of Lord Ram. So Lord Chaitanya goes to his house for lunch, and he's sitting there and he's waiting and waiting, and after a while he looks out to see, when you're going to be finished cooking, and he sees the Brahmin has not started cooking. So he asks him, what's wrong? And this devotee said, sometimes I just think about this pastime of Sita being kidnapped, and I think she was touched. Her transcendental body was touched by this demon. But how could it be? And if it happened, it's just too bad. So how could it have happened? And Lord Chaitanya said, okay, just hang on, I'll sort things out. So he left, and he went to, what was it? Was it not the Adi Keshava temple, but some temple in South India, where they had a copy of one of the Puranas. Do you remember which Purana? Kurma Purana, which describes the pastime in detail. And there it's described that when Sita was kidnapped, well, she had to penetrate the mystical circle created by Lakshman, who is the Supreme Lord. So it wasn't just a sort of, regular mystical circle, but it was a transcendental mystical circle. In order for Sita to be grabbed, she had to pass through that. And it was empowered by, among other things, Agni Mantra. So as she was approaching, she herself stepped through, and then Ravana grabbed her. Just as she was approaching and stepping through, she went to Agni Loka, and a Maya Sita came out the other side. It's a little bit like, same kind of principle, you could say, like we hear that when, in Krishna's pastimes, when demons are killed, they're killed by Lord Vishnu, not actually by Krishna. Because if it was Krishna, it would mean Krishna is working. Yeah, he has to work, he has to fight. But Krishna never works. He just enjoys pastimes. So therefore, Lord Vishnu kills the demons. But it's not that demon comes, Krishna steps back and says, okay, Lord Vishnu, come out, kill the demon. And Lord Vishnu comes out, kills the demon, then re-enters the body of Krishna. You don't see it. That you don't see. It just looks like Krishna killed the demon. But actually it was Lord Vishnu who killed the demon. And that actually happened, that somehow Lord Vishnu came out and then met with the demon and then came back in, but you don't see those things happening. Yeah, so he kidnapped a Maya Sita. And if you really want to get into it, the Maya Sita wanted, she was there, she was rescued, the Maya Sita was rescued. The Maya Sita walked through fire, but in the middle of the fire, the real Sita came back from Agni Loka, and the Maya Sita went to Agni Loka. But the Maya Sita, having had this experience with Lord Ram, wanted to become his wife. So later, she was born as the daughter of the king of, I think it's Solapur. And she married Venkateshwar in Tirupati, his name is Srinivas actually, but people call him Venkateshwar, Balaji, and she married him. So her desire to marry the Lord was fulfilled. Anyway, we diverge. Let's carry on. Carrying out the order of his father, who was bound by a promise to his wife, Lord Ramachandra left behind his kingdom, opulence, friends, well-wishers, residence, and everything else. Just as a liberated soul gives up his life, and went to the forest with Sita. So Of course, that in Valmiki Ramayana is, the whole thing is addressed in great detail. Here it's just, mentioned as we read. But the point was, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport actually, about how Kaikeyi had got a benediction. She saved his life on the battlefield. He was knocked unconscious and would have just been killed. But she got on the chariot and took the chariot out and revived him, in this way saving his life. And he said, Dasarath said, I'll give you a benediction, just tell me what you want, and it's yours, if I'm capable. And she said, well, let's hold on. When I really need it, I'm doing okay at the moment, but when I need it, I'll ask. So later, her mind became contaminated by association with, what's her name? Mantara. This hunchbacked woman who had sort of a hunched mind too. She was really envious. Twisted the mind of Kaikeyi that actually your son Bharat should become king. Why should Ram become king? So then at one point Kaikeyi, as mentioned here, approached Dasarath and said, you remember that benediction? I want to take it now. And he said, yes, fine, tell me. I want my son Bharat to become the king and Ram to be banished. And this was the day before Ram was to be not enthroned, but there's a preparatory process for the prince who's going to become the king. The day before he was to go through that procedure. And as the verse says, Lord Ram, being ordered by his father that I have to banish you for 14 years, he left home, his opulence, his kingdom, just his everything, just as a liberated soul gives up his life. Just like that. Good. Very good. Not like, wow, it's tough, but I'll hang in there and try and do it. Just like a liberated soul. Let me leave this horrible material body behind and go into a transcendental position. So yeah, he did like that. Even though Mantara tried to mock him, and just see what's happened to you now. Now you've lost everything on your father's order. And Ram, according to Valmiki Ramayana, says, if my father orders me, whatever he orders me, I'll just do it. If he orders me to enter fire, I'll just enter fire. There's nothing I won't do if my father orders me. And this is one of the things about Lord Ram, that he is, as Krishna, well, Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Ram, they're known as, each one is known as such and such Purushottama. Purushottama meaning the Supreme Person. So Krishna is Leela Purushottama, the Supreme Person who's particularly notable for his Leelas. And Lord Chaitanya is known as, what is it? Prema Purushottama, the Supreme Lord who's known for his prema, his love. And Lord Ram is known as, what is it? Maryada Purushottama. Maryada means rules and regulations, like moral standards, legal standards. He's notable for that he just does the right thing. Whether it, is good for him or bad for him, doesn't matter. If it's the right thing, that's it, full stop. He just does it. Therefore, Lord Ram said, for me, there's only one word. Just one word. Whatever's the truth, that's it. And for me, one wife. In those days, of course, well, Dasarath had what? At least two. And it was common, it was normal, particularly for Kshatriyas, to have more than one wife in those days. So one wife, one word, one wife, and for his enemy, one arrow. Just one, not two or three. So these are the three ones of Lord Ram. Right. While wandering in the forest where he accepted a life of hardship, carrying his invincible bow and arrows in his hand, Lord Ramachandra deformed Ravana's sister, who was polluted with lusty desires, by cutting off her nose and ears. So this is also described, and it's described in considerable detail in Valmiki Ramayana. Here it's referred to. He also killed her 14,000 Rakshasa friends, headed by Kara, Trishara, and Dushana. O King Parikshit, when Ravana, who had 10 heads on his shoulders, heard about the beautiful and attractive features of Sita, his mind was agitated by lusty desires, and he went to kidnap her. To distract Lord Ramachandra from his ashram, Ravana sent Maricha in the form of a golden deer. And when Lord Ramachandra saw that golden deer, he left his residence and followed it, and finally killed it with a sharp arrow, just as Lord Shiva killed Daksha. So, yes, Maricha was a human, but he was a magician. Yeah, and he could transform himself into different physical forms. So he was able to transform himself into the form of a very beautiful little deer, like a sort of deer cub, by his mystical powers. He was not limited to, making ashes, as we hear some can do. But he could change his form completely. And Ravana told him, Maricha, you got to do this. And Maricha said, but Ram, at least after a while, he'll understand that I'm not a deer, I'm Maricha, the wizard, and he'll kill me. And I'd rather not be killed, thank you. And Ravana said, okay, if you don't want to do it, I'll kill you. So just choose, who do you want to be killed by? And Maricha said, all right, I'll be killed by Lord Ram. So he took the form of the deer. And then this sort of little controversial part, but we mentioned how, the story with Lord Chaitanya. He went to wherever it was and found the Kurma Purana, and found where Kurma Purana describes this whole incident with like the exchanging of Sita and the Maya Sita. And Lord Chaitanya, what he did, he tore out the pages. He didn't take out his iPhone and photograph them, but he tore the actual pages out of the book. and took it back and showed the pages to the Brahmin devotee of Lord Ram, who was really happy. And that devotee Brahmin said, yeah, I thought, how could it be possible? She's the goddess of fortune. He's a Rakshasa. I mean, he's a cannibal. He's so degraded. He's not even degraded like your typical meat eater. He eats humans. It's just too degraded. How could he touch her? It's not possible. And so he'd just get into a meditation about it and just lose it. And that's what happened when he had invited Lord Chaitanya for lunch. So Lord Chaitanya took back those pages, the devotee read them, he was really happy, and he cooked lunch. And Lord Chaitanya had a nice lunch. But the Bhagavatam says, when Ramachandra entered the forest and Lakshman was also absent, the worst of the Rakshasas, Ravana, kidnapped Sita Devi, the daughter of the king of Videha, just as a tiger seizes unprotected sheep when the shepherd is absent. When Lord Ramachandra wandered in the forest with his brother Lakshman, as if very much distressed due to separation from his wife. Thus, he showed by his personal example the condition of a person attached to women. Yeah, that's another very important lesson. That material attachment to the opposite sex is, some people need it. Some devotees need it. They'd be better off, they'd be more Krishna conscious if they have the association of a devotee member of the opposite sex, a suitable devotee member of the opposite sex, than if they tried to continue on celibate. They'd be more Krishna conscious if they have a Krishna conscious wife or husband than if they try to carry on without. But in general, the point is, within this material world, that people who are attached, men who are attached to women, and women who are attached to men, it's very distressing. And it can be incredibly distressing. It can be too distressing. And how many people have committed suicide about these things? Are you familiar with Romeo and Juliet? What a story. Boy, what a story. When I was youngish, sort of maybe 12 or 13, my father took me to see the movie Romeo and Juliet. And it was it was a very authentic, pretty authentic movie. It's still very famous. It had Olivia Hussey as Juliet. Anyway, I forget exactly how it works out, but right at the end, one of them appears to be dead, or one of them takes some poison, appears to be dead but is not dead. And so the other one, who thinks now that the first one is dead, I forget how he or she did it, but actually kills themselves. And now the other one, who was poisoned, I think, but not fatally, comes back to consciousness and sees the other one is dead and kills themselves. So now they're both dead. This is, Romeo and Juliet, which is one of the, if not probably the great tragedy of, at least the English language literature. It's a hard life. It's a really hard life. And how many get cheated by their spouse? How many? It's really a lot. You know, George Harrison said, he was asked, because, I mean, you may not be familiar with these people because they're from a different era, but George Harrison was married to one young lady, Patty Boyd, who was like big model, so she's like really, by those standards, really beautiful. But his best friend was Eric Clapton, who was not as famous as George Harrison, but still he was really famous, extremely famous, and he still is actually. And so they were together a lot. And you know what happens when a lot of these, you know, the husband or the wife runs off with whoever, somebody, often it's with the best friend of their partner, because the best friend of the partner spends so much time with them. And that's what happened. She ran off with Eric Clapton, although it was a disastrous failure, because he was combination alcoholic and drug addict at the same time. And so there's an interview. If you look, you can find it. I saw it on YouTube. George Harrison is being interviewed. And how's your relationship now with Eric Clapton? And George Harrison says, oh, it's really good. We share the same wife. They remained friends. They remained very close friends, even though he ran off with his wife, Harry Ball. I don't know if any of you have had a wife or husband who ran off with someone else. Let us just say, Hare Krishna. So yeah, very important lesson, and Prabhupada gives an extensive purport, actually. It's pretty extensive, discussing this whole point about the frailties of these material relationships with the opposite sex. And actually, Prabhupada, in the purport, he quotes different things about how it was the Maya Sita and how she was exchanged. And in the end, according to what Prabhupada quotes, she was burnt in the fire and the real Sita came out. But then apparently the Maya Sita was burnt, but then she came back to life. Okay, devotees, let's see. I'll read one more verse. Lord Ramachandra, whose lotus feet are worshipped by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, had assumed the form of a human being. Thus he performed the funeral ceremony of Jatayu, who was killed by Ravana. The Lord then killed the demon named Kabanda, and after making friends with the monkey chiefs, killing Vali, and arranging for the deliverance of Mother Sita, he went to the beach of the ocean. Yes. And then it goes on what he did on the beach, but it doesn't say anything about him interacting with Lord Shiva. You know, now there's big temple there. It's on an island, actually. It's an island off the coast of India. But it's not very far. Have you been to Rameshwaram? Well, you're South African, aren't you? Who you? Yes.
No. Yeah, I haven't been there. I'm from South Africa.
Huh?
I'm South African.
Okay, sorry. I don't know if any of you have been to Rameshwaram, but it's an island off the coast, about a couple of kilometers. And you go by train, and there's a bridge now too, but you go by train over the ocean, to this island. I forget what they call the island. And there's this huge temple, it's really, really big, of Rameshwaram, and it's a temple of Lord Shiva. So, devotees, what happened after that? Wow. Tune in this evening and find out what happens next. Boy, it's extreme. It's extremely extreme. Yeah. So now, okay. So now we can very happily not have breakfast and carry on with our devotional service. And strictly speaking, the break fast time which is accepted by the GBC body is 12. So after 12, any time after 12, you can take prasad and break your fast. Hare Krishna. Hare Rama. Sri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ke. Sri Ram Navami Mahotsava Ke. Hare Krishna.
Chaitanya Swami Maharaj ki.
Okay, anyway. Oh,
Give me 5 seconds.